of all, I think your analysis was very straight-lined. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they weren't talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the
an
kind of
erratic
Mickey
detective,
Rodriguez.
is Mickey Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? No, girl, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Then you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hi there, thanks for being with us. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show for the opening of the week, Monday, or you can say the second day in the week. And the talk of the tongue, or we can say the talk of the country, is budget. I think most citizens look forward to a budget because they want to know what's inside the budget for their fellow citizens. Tonight we have two panelists along with my co-host Leonard Craig, and all three of them have something in common and nothing in common with me. All three of them are finance people, economics people. All I know is about Plato and Aristotle philosophy books. So I will let my co-host Leonard Craig take over. Our guest this evening is well-known regional economist who held the lead economist position for the Caribbean at the Inter-American Development Bank and is right now a senior lecturer or maybe professor in economics at the University of Guyana. And with us, is no stranger to this program, he is the economic advisor to the leader of the opposition in Guyana, Mr. Aubrey Norton. And his name needs no introduction, the famous Elson Lowe, sitting, of course, usually with me, is another economist trained in Germany and China in economics, and that is Leonard Craig. I will now hand over, before saying thank you to our two guests, I will just hand over to Leonard Craig, but one thing before the protocols, and I hand over to Mr. Craig. There is a rumor going around in Guyana. I don't know if Leonard has heard it, but I'll tell you the rumor now, and we'll find out in a few minutes if it's a rumor or if it's true. I understand that Mr. Aubrey Norton will be conceding the presidential candidacy to a wider opposition fold, but Mr. Norton is insisting that the presidential candidate come from another PNC leader, and he has nominated Elson Lowe. Is that so?
Well, Freddie, you're looking to cause trouble here today, man.
Well, that's why it's a rumor then.
My understanding of it is the leader of our party is going to be the presidential candidate unless he says otherwise.
Okay, so it's a rumor.
It's news to me.
Okay. Dr. Thomas, your third appearance. Thanks for being here. Yeah. I don't need to shake Elson hands, a regular here. Leonard, over to you.
Good evening again, gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Here are some of the things in the budget you wanted.
We heard the Minister of Finance read the budget Friday gone, a couple of days, and I'm sure you've had a chance to digest some of it. And so let's have a discussion on it. My first question is going to be, what jumped out as you most, all right? One that draws your interest, your personal interest, right? So that's the first thing. Secondly, what comes to you as something that you find to be negative, and what you find to be positive? Something that is dear to you, something negative, something positive in the budget presentation. Dr. Thomas.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for the invitation. I guess it's my third visit to this show, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Before you came in, I was telling them we went to UG together. I still don't know who's senior to who.
No, you're senior. I mean, no question.
Well, if I was senior to you, you didn't give me anything when you were at IDB.
No, well, always in a good time. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, there's not about seniority. We're all equals, It's like, so the cooperative ideal behind Guyana.
There you go.
But I really appreciate the opportunity for dialogue, because I really think at this point in our history, in our country, we need dialogue. And the more opportunities we have to just discuss what's going on, the better. And it worries me that there, especially among young people, there seems to be almost a fear of engaging. It's a really serious problem. So this is really appreciated.
Next PNC leader.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Now, let me just say this. Having said that, my thing is really my driving interest for about 10 years now has been the need for electoral and constitutional reform in this country. And so I'm going to approach the budget through those lens, that lens, all right? That to show where there's a connection between the need. As a matter of fact, the whole look at the budget kind of reinforces that need. So then let me just say another kind of starting point. I really emphasize nonpartisanship in the dialogue, which means that if I am critical of anything in this budget, that's not a defense of the APNU or something like that. It is my duty to be open about what I see. So having said those things, I think that the budget, this budget really reinforces the inescapable need for things to change constitutionally in this country. First of all, here you have a government that can come with a budget of $1.3 trillion, right? The problem with that is, here it is, one group of people can have total control over that level of resources in this country. That is a recipe for ongoing instability. I know we talk about, I mean, quite frankly, I have to say I didn't have the chance to digest. The budget speech was 5 hours long, and so on. So I mean, we are still in the process of digesting it, but obviously it's got a mammoth capital program. It's a very impressive capital program, but the problem is that here it is, you have one group of people who have that amount of control over that. And I mean, in other countries, you may have the same situation. The problem is the constitution that gives one group of people that level of control over that massive amount of resources. So that is, my main problem. And I will expand on that as we go along. Basically, because at another level, the whole budget presentation to me is a pantomime. It's not a debate because there's no debating in it. The opposition has no ability to influence the budget. The rest of the society has no ability to influence the budget, and that is not the weakness. There is not. It's constitutional. It's not about the people. It's not about the PPPC or whoever. It is that our arrangements, our political arrangements, give to the party in power that kind of winner-take-all control over those massive resources. And in a multi-ethnic, multiple, plural society, that is not acceptable, and that is what we need to address. So I'm gonna stop there. I don't plan to go into the details of how much money is budgeted for this or how much for that, and because it's a program, it's a government program,
all right?
Right. So, but that's my basic position.
Go right ahead.
What I would say, thank you very much for your contribution there. What I'd say is that when I look at this budget, which is an election year budget, really, and a signal of future intent, as well as a signal as to what the government is looking at as its priorities right now, it seems to me to be a budget that has failed to meet the moment. And I'll elaborate on that a bit. To narrow in on some of the things that you asked us to comment on there, one of the things that really struck me that I think is notable to me, but I think Guyanese as a whole are really concerned about this. It was interesting that the government removed the VAT on generators, which felt like a soft signal to expect more blackouts. I thought that was very striking. It is also interesting that the government, while speaking about the gas energy project, didn't elaborate on making electricity free for categories of people and so on, whereas obviously there's a lot of fiscal space for various measures. And so it made me more worried about the electricity situation in the country. There are also a couple of arbitrations between the contractor on the energy project and the government. There was one originally, there's now a second one. The deadline for the project has been pushed back. And so this budget gave a soft signal that something seems to be up in terms of the country's power supply in the near future. So that struck me on a personal level, that made me concerned. I would say in terms of what I thought was good, I always think that it is good when we improve, when we provide more to people in terms of reducing our tax rates, income tax rates, and we increase our threshold. Of course, I think the increase was extremely minimal. We've advocated for a $400,000 tax-free threshold as opposed to $130,000 as the government is saying right now. But it is good that there's an increase, but it's just not enough. And then I would say, on the other end, what I didn't like or was concerning is there's again not been much of a focus around the cost of living issue. You saw $9 billion put towards direct cost of living mitigation. We've said at least $20 billion should be put towards that. But this is an environment in which we've been dealing with a cost of living crisis for years on end now. It's not a new crisis. And the government may argue, well, they didn't cause the crisis. But ultimately, it's their responsibility to do something about it. And across the world, you've seen, 9 out of 10 governments have lost vote share on the basis of this cost of living crisis. And so it is a budget which, to me, just didn't recognize where we are right now in terms of how citizens are feeling worldwide as well in Guyana, and didn't prioritize the issue which I've pointed out before. I don't know if I pointed out on the show, but I'm a big fan of Rishi Sunak in the UK. Fellow Goldman Sachs guy did an excellent job, reduced inflation, got the UK economy growing, obliterated in the polls. Technical excellence obliterated in the polls. The cost of living crisis is very significant. It is a crisis that has had ramifications. And so this budget, I think, just doesn't center on the real issue. And there are a wide range of measures, some we've advocated, some that they could have expanded on, that could have focused the budget a bit more. And as a result, helped the Guyanese to feel a lot more comfortable. That's not happened. So now we're in an environment where, the cats are among the pigeons.
All right. Let me ask you a quick question. Do you believe in moving income tax threshold up and down, or you believe it should tend upward only? Do you believe in moving income tax rates up and down, to use a term you used just now, to meet the moment? How do you look at that as a economic advisor?
Well, there's two questions there. One is, what are your revenue needs? Mm-hmm. And the second is, what outcomes are you looking to produce? Mm-hmm. As an example, during the US's golden period in like the 60s and so on, very high income tax rates. Mm-hmm. So it could be that where you have a concentration of income, you need to have a high income tax rate. Mm-hmm. What we've observed in Guyana, based on the Bank of Guyana reports, is that we've seen a sharp increase, over 20% increase in the income tax revenue due to the oil and gas sector. Mm-hmm. Now, the oil and gas sector, and this is an analogy that I use quite a lot, it has a different production function. It functions in a different way than the other sectors because it is very capital intensive, very technological intensive, few workers, and the pay is very high. So as that sector grows, it would have a big impact on your tax revenue. But the other sectors where people are not making use of technology to the same degree, the IDB has on multiple occasions flagged Guyana as the country with the second lowest or the lowest level of technological adoption. We're not in the non-oil economy going to catch up to that oil economy in the near future. That is going to take a long time because we have to accumulate the level of capital. We have to adopt technologies and raise wages. So therefore, you can use your tax threshold, use your tax policy to help to rebalance the economy a bit. Otherwise, you end up with bizarre contradictions like Guyana having a per capita income adjusted for prices higher than the United Arab Emirates. But your tax threshold moved from $100,000 to $130,000. That's the world you're going to keep living in, and it's going to get worse every year.
What I'm trying to do, the reason for asking the question, I'm trying to interrogate that 400,000 threshold that you're talking about, and whether you believe it is sustainable or is it that will it have a built-in sunset or time-bound law attached to it, and if, because we know the price for oil is subject to a number of variances and volatility, how, if something goes wrong in the oil sector, how do you sustain a country on a threshold of $400,000 and what was the other thing you output? I think I saw something from I think it's your desk or the desk of the opposition leader. Yes. 400,000. What else? What are the other measures?
So public servant minimum wage, 200,000 as an example.
How do you sustain those?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing that we want to make clear, and it's something that is also close to my heart, is I was at Goldman Sachs when Venezuela went through its major crises. And the problem that they faced is that they were not good at managing their sovereign wealth fund. So their sovereign wealth fund has basically nothing inside. What we have said is this country needs to A, make more efficient use of its resources, and B, not indiscriminately raid the sovereign wealth fund. You need to have a buffer, so that if there is oil price volatility, you can ride out that volatility. Venezuela didn't have a buffer, and so it was all hell breaks loose. What we are saying is we need to leave the money in the sovereign wealth fund, operationalize the fund, get interest from it, use our monies more efficiently, and grow that way.
Yeah, but
Because if we don't, and we follow the current trajectory, if there is a major collapse, having raided the fund, this government can't sustain this national budget for more than like a year or two before there is a real problem. And that's with the current threshold. So what I'm saying is, you can shift the threshold. The point is, keep your cash in hand so that if there's volatility, you can use it. And of course, the big problem Venezuela faced is that when oil prices fall, nobody is your friend, nobody wants to lend to you because this is fear, will it ever come back up? That's the world we're living in right now. If it falls in 2 years, you know. So what I'm saying is, the government has managed the system in the opposite way that it should be managed.
I'll come back to you because there's something I want to interrogate there.
Sure.
Dr. Thomas, if you're going to respond, you'll respond thing, but please also include this response. You spoke about constitutional reform, and let's assume I want to agree with you that one group of people having total administration over
the resources,
those trillions in the budget, what would you propose as a different formula, along with any response to it?
No, well, okay, but just to follow up, first of all, on the points made, Elson. May I call you Elson?
That's fine enough. Sure.
Yeah. The electricity thing was easy to notice, you know. I mean, as an example of the massive use of these resources and compared to the results. I mean, over the last year, we've had so many cases of, you know, barges, 2 barges from Turkey, from here, there, you know, how many different, you know, in other words, we've had a lot of resources paid to electricity, to the electricity sector without results. And that is, the problem there is that there is no avenue for correction, you know, within the existing system. And the problem is the amount of money that there is. You see, if we didn't have the money, we couldn't be getting all these barges and all these turbines. Okay? And maybe we would have been forced to find a result. The fact of the matter is there's cash, so we could keep throwing the cash. I made this point in the last time I was here. We can keep throwing cash at the problems without the, you know, this, and the rest of the population is concerned about it, you know, it isn't benefiting. The same thing with the price, the issue of the high cost of living. One thing I noticed from the budget, there's all this issue of spending and so on, but there wasn't that much attention to issues of wage levels and, you know, you can, you know, do things with the taxes and so on. But the fact of the matter is, people's earnings are not rising. And, you know, the question is, what is the government's strategy? That is something that's really, you know, you're spending all this money, but what is the strategy? And maybe how should we be involved in understanding the strategy? You know, you hear about projects. I went up to Silicon City one day recently. You don't hear too much about it. But it seems to me, you know, something is going on there. And one of these days, there's going to be a big launch or something. It almost seems to me like somebody's pet project, rather than being part of a fundamental structure, you know, plan, a strategy. This is where we're going. And I think that sense of strategy is what is one thing's missing from the budget. And so I really think that these are the things that, you know, we need to pay attention to, and how we engage. You know, there's no restraint. The government is going to go and pass whatever budget they come up with. And there's also this talk about how much time the opposition is being given to prepare for the budget and for this debate. And then, you know, one of the things we need to do in order to assess the budget, I don't even want to look too much at the future of the budget. Look at the past look at the last budget. Look at the budgets in the past, and what are the difficulties? I mean, you get a budget. It was $1.1 trillion last time, but then you had supplementary budgets, right? The actual expenditure at the end of the year was, instead of 1.14, it was 1.18 trillion. All right. So you have supplementary budgets during the year. You have this access that the government has to the Natural Resource Fund, right? So that's why, for me to spend my time on this particular budget, there's a lot that we can learn from it. But the fact of the matter is, the machinery there makes the debate less important.
So the question I'd like to get to, do you have a concept of the format?
What we need,
we could, or at least one format that we could
let me tell
pursue.
you. I mean, basically, we need a situation where there's more accountability between. You see, the parliament we have right now is one where the representatives are not accountable to the population directly. So we need direct representation in parliament, so that people have. And then the second thing is this ability of the parties to the control the parties have over their members in parliament. That is unacceptable. All right. So if you have a situation where there can be more connection to the voters and less control by the party leadership over the representation, then you can have a proper debate, because the people in the parliament will know that they're being elected, their position in parliament depends on their service to the population.
Freddie, you got a question?
Yeah, I think Dr. Tom started his presentation more on a sociological foundation and a political foundation rather than an economic one, and he did say that. But there are two problems the modern human and the theoretician will have with Dr. Thomas' presentation. First of all, it cuts out elections, because elections is the direct link between the people and those elected. And the graphic example of that is Mr. Trump, in which Mr. Trump's déploiement, conceptualizations, ideological orientation, style, everything was opposed to Miss Harris. And the voters say, we want this guy with that style, with those presentations, to run the country. Now, I think the thing about direct accountability is more of an idealistic thing, but it doesn't happen in the real world. If we go back to ancient times with the Greek city-state, I mean, Socrates was charged and convicted, and one of the charges against Socrates is, instead of you roaming around the place and preaching politics, come and join the thing. So how do you factor in direct election of people putting leaders inside there, as against that when they're getting there, they're not accountable, they're not, there's no direct face-to-face. Now the thing about the resources and the control of the resources, I know of no country in the modern world where an elected government has a restraint on the budget and has a restraint on how they allocate resources. If you can tell me that, I'll appreciate it. I will appreciate the Adam version.
Okay. So, well, first of all, the reality, whether it's the U.S. or whatever, the problem, evidently you have problems with Trump being elected, but how many million Americans didn't? And so one of the things about democracy is it calls for a little bit of faith. Do you have faith? Do you have faith and belief in people, in the population? And what will happen is from time to time, the elections will generate strange outcomes. But on the whole, the question is, do you believe? You see, the American public voted for Trump, whether you like it or not. All right, so that is a result of direct.
Yeah, but
and then
That is
no, that is the result of a direct vote. This is the people voting for this guy. But then the next question is, hold on.
Right,
because in Guyana, we have a system where people vote for a party. They don't vote if you who represents you. Who do you respond? Does anybody?
Guyana is not alone in that.
I know it's not, but you see, the point is, listen.
There are dozens of top countries in the world where you vote for a party.
Usually, if they have, look, I'm not going to, this is not about other countries. This is about Guyana.
No,
and hold on, let me Freddie, let me go back to, let me follow up on a point you made. You know of no country where the government doesn't have that kind of control. And in most countries, whether it's in the US, they have this filibuster provision where people you have to have at least 60% support, which means that the only way to pass certain things in the U.S. Congress is you have to have bipartisan support. In other words, oh yes,
no.
You have to have
majority vote. You have the majority vote in the Senate, but it operates in a majority vote system, not in a 60% system.
The thing has to go through Congress before it gets to the Senate. And the important thing is, as a matter of fact, Freddie,
a lot of countries have a two-tier system.
You listen. As a matter of fact, the other thing is that the way things work in the U.S., you don't even have control of people in your own party, in terms of the of what you know why? Because the guy who's a representative for New York or for Minnesota or whatever has to.
That's a federal system. It's the same in India. It's the same in Canada.
No.
Overall, India. But overall, it doesn't affect the direction the government of the United States want to go in.
Of course it does.
Did you hear
Of course it does.
Did you see a memo? Did you see a memo that was made public that the German ambassador to the U.S. sent his government? He outlined how Trump is going to erode democracy, and he pinpointed the areas that Trump are going to use, and those areas are legally vested and constitutionally vested in the president. Please Google German ambassador, and you will see the kind of power the president has, which is over and above the power of the president of Guyana. And I think yes, we do. We have this
sir.
We have this. No. The president of France and the United States have far more power, the possession of power to do things than the Guyanese president.
That is not the case.
Argue for me.
We can argue about that. We can argue with that. But that's not true.
I think we're going in.
We're going in the wrong direction. But the point is,
hear this. You still haven't responded to the question. I would like
his framework as an alternative.
Right.
No, I've given you a framework. You just don't accept it. You don't agree with it. Well, I'm saying that we have to have more representative government.
Okay, so you're saying that either the entire electoral system or part of it needs to go on a first past the post basis.
Yeah, part of it.
Whereby people elect their representative directly.
Yes.
And the representative is less beholden to their party.
Right. Because we have right now in the provision that the representative of the list can eliminate, take people out
and recall and so on.
Right.
So then my next question
is a provision. A provision I don't think exists anywhere else in the world. Those are the provisions.
I believe.
Those are the
I like that provision because I believe if I have the power to institute you from an entire list of 100 and something people, I must be able to recall you and substitute at any time.
Yeah, but then that.
So I personally don't have anything.
Yeah, but then don't you have problem? You don't have any problem with the fact that gives an individual unacceptable level of control over the political system.
I on this show, I am not here to give I wanted to give you guys.
No, but you just gave your opinion.
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to extend on it, but just allow me. Just allow me a quick minute. I understand what you're saying with it giving the individual, like the leader of the list, tremendous powers. But under the system that we have of proportional representation, those powers are necessary to make the system work as effective as it should. Now,
why?
And that's what I'm going to say. Now, if you do not have that power, it therefore means then that I, who cast my vote for a party system, then you're converting that into an individual system, and that individual could do anything vulgar they want, and you can't recall them, and going against even a manifesto. Remember, a party is elected based on a manifesto they put out, or elected based on whatever other whim voters may have. But you elect them based on a social contract that as a group, and that we give you, the leader of the list, the power to extract people from that group as you feel. Right? So under the system that we have, that is necessary to make the system more as efficient as possible. If you don't do that, you can have a lot of confusion and anarchy within the system. Right? In that, you can then, for example, what happened with Charandas, I understand why he did it, and I sympathize with him. But I don't like that system. You can't be able to vote against the list, against the leader of the list that put you to sit. Because it's the leader's prerogative.
It's not the leader who put you there. It is the voters.
The voters put 200 people from a list there. Why do you think you are special? You only become special because the leader of the list who put you there. But you have equal level of commitment from the voters as the 200 other people on the list.
My friend, look,
I hear what you're saying, and I understand the faults in the system.
No, but Leonard,
but the system we have
needs. You talk about my kind of philosophy. You're the philosopher. There are some problems in this country that have to do with the way people view one another, view things. And what you were outlining there is a serious weakness in this country, where people ascribe to leaders some kind of special power, I can't stop reminding people that a couple of days ago, the president of South Korea was arrested by his police force. And that kind of thing you've had happen all over.
They're not putting it.
No, because
he was arrested because his parliament...
It doesn't matter why he was arrested.
No.
He was arrested.
He would have to be stripped of his powers
It
first.
cannot happen.
It's not the police going to arrest him. The people who empowered the police to arrest, the police was empowered by a legitimate forum to arrest him.
Precisely.
Exactly.
Precisely. Which cannot happen here. Cannot happen here because partly because the mentality in this country is that these people are special above, and that's what you're saying.
We'll come back to you.
I think it can happen in this country. You got to understand what what this guy was doing in South Korea. And if we go on to that, Elson Lowe will be locked out. But briefly, he was taking South Korea in the direction where they would have to enter the war in Ukraine. And the people said, no. I think if President Ali says in this country, all girls 18 years old would have to stop wearing pants, there could be a rebellion in his own party. There was a rebellion in the South Korean own party. No, it's not as simple as you put it. But that means
no. I think you are oversimplifying the thing.
Let's move on.
The next leader of the PNC, please.
No. But listen, I mean,
we'll come back to you. I got that in mind to come back to. Don't worry. Let's Elson, please go on and elaborate.
The budget. It's not a bad budget. It's in some.
I wanted you to elaborate along with other things that you will talk about as you choose. But I'd like very much you to elaborate the financing part of the budget of your 400,000
The budget will benefit him because I hear he's buying a generator.
Right? The financing part and the sustainability of that.
Absolutely. Let me make one quick comment on the question of the constitutional reform question. Because when I first moved back to the country, I was involved in constitutional reform. I even
how long ago was that?
It was about 7 years now, 8 years now. I even ran a debate where the finals was the question of proportional representation versus first past the post. There are pros and cons of both systems, and I think we in Guyana have to improve upon our current system. But one of the questions regarding first past the post is that on occasion, you will have a minority in terms of the voting population, but you'll have a president in there. And Trump last time, not this time, the time before, I think had won the minority of it. And the Republicans, I think, on more than one occasion have had a minority and have been in office.
Just one thing. I'm not proposing first past the post.
Okay.
I'm solidly in the proportional representation camp.
Because that is a serious democratic question in of itself.
And one of the few things, there are lots of things that I think, just a quick one, following up on that. I think we are in danger many times when the PPP and the PNC do something, agree on something, like that provision about the recall. But one of the few things that the two parties agreed on was this move to proportional representation back in 1964. And I think that I've actually produced a little video.
They did?
But Jagan said no.
They both agreed? I don't think they agreed.
No.
Jagan said Dr. Sands imposed it.
No, Dr. Jagan. Never mind that. I believe that it was an agreement. It couldn't have happened if he didn't agree. He said he was strict.
No.
He said Dr. Sands opposed.
Barnum wrote his 1980 Constitution had a referendum. They claim it was rigged. That, and that's how we got it.
Freddie, I didn't expect to come on a show so interesting as
64.
Anyway,
64, not 80.
All right.
You prepare yourself to take over the leadership. That is not.
I did not expect to come on a show.
Norton will go, right?
We're going on a whole lot of. I did not expect to come on a show so interesting as this.
Please stop making the guests uncomfortable. Please stop making the guests.
I believe they got leadership.
If he is a young man and he don't have leadership ambition, there's something wrong. But please don't make the guests uncomfortable.
Let him to the question.
Just continue with the question, please.
But listen, man, what I want to do is, I think it's important for us to be concrete in a couple of things regarding how we finance the country going forward.
Yeah.
The first is, you got to recognize that from 2020 to now, this budget is 4 times larger. This is a sharp increase in the size of this budget. Now, our ability to deliver efficiently with a good return on this scale is very much in question. And the IMF was brought up this question. People tries to dodge and say the IMF was talking about us when we said that when it was put out in one of their assessments that for every dollar that Guyana's government invests, public sector investment program, you lose 4 to 2 cents due to incompetence, corruption, and inability to manage things, which is worse than the regional average, which is worse than the developing country world average, and far worse, obviously, than the developed world's average. Now, what that means, if you've got this huge budget, if you administer the budget better, probably $1 billion US in savings that you can actually carry out. And I can show you I have 12 examples of specific projects where millions of US were just wasted. One of the most classic examples, which is something we've been talking about for a while, moving the Wales gas energy plant from Clonbrooke site to Wales has made the pipeline much longer, has caused delays because of the soil, and that by itself is 120 million US just in waste. Boom. Now that cash grant that the government's putting out, that's 60 billion. Those types of things could have been repurposed for various other things. You could have used it for public servants. You could have used it for the education system. And I got a long list of things like that. So that's number one. That is to say, you can do all the things we were saying, plus do the infrastructure works. If you run the country, as well as, I don't know, Trinidad. That's how bad the situation is. Number one. Number two is that, and this is what the finance...
But you don't have to do that. You don't have to. Partly because you have the cash. You have the cash.
Well, that's part of the problem.
You have the cash. Central cash.
Well, that's part of the problem. But my point is, Trinidad is not the best example, but we're worse than Trinidad. And that's what's so concerning. Even when you talk about the power ship, if they had listened to what we were advocating... Worse than
Trinidad at what stage of Trinidad's development?
Well, based off of it would be at the current state, because the PSI, the IMF assessment would have been relatively recent. But my point is, we can't be underperforming the Caribbean average, the regional average, and we can't be underperforming the developing world average. I mean, come on, we can do as well as the other developing countries. That's number one. And so therefore, there's very significant savings, which we can concretely point to. Even the power ship, if they had actually gone for a physical structure here where you bring in generators, you set it up, instead of a ship which is so expensive, that's like 50, 60 million US that was lost for no reason other than, because it was an emergency measure. It didn't need to be an emergency measure. And in February, I think of that year, we said, get additional power because of the growth rate of the country. So there's a lot of that, which we will cut down on. And one of the things I want to help Guyanese to understand is not Elson Lowe running around the place doing that. We're going to bring in consultants, many of them Ivy League people, top people. These men work 12 hours a day. I can tell you that because I used to work 12 hours a day. And the level of productivity you're going to see out of them will be so extreme that it'll be unbelievable. Because those guys are very capable, and they're going to knock out 15 feasibility studies so fast. And then we're going to send them to do another 15, and we're going to monitor these projects by hiring staff to monitor them. So that is a massive efficiency that we can get going. That's number one. Number two is that the finance minister himself said that Guyana has the second lowest debt to GDP ratio in the Western Hemisphere. He also said that the ratio of debt relative to the income of the government has fallen. So there's a lot of space for us to grow by cleverly and by carefully managing our debt, rather than spending out our cash in hand now, such that if there is a fall in the oil price, it'll now be difficult for us to find that debt. So therefore, by managing our debt more thoughtfully, by making use of interest from the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and by more efficiently spending, we can get far more out of these budgets than we currently are getting. And that will facilitate us allowing for consumption and so on by increasing the tax threshold. And let us not forget that even of that $400,000, because there's a high marginal propensity to consume, because people will consume a lot in Guyana because it's a relatively low income level, that means that you'll have a much larger share of VAT. You see, so that it will counterbalance. You'll also have larger growth in various industries that are now going to be fed by this new demand. Therefore, it just requires us having a cool head, absorbing the fact that we're rich now, we can hire people to do it for us, hiring the people and getting it done. They will be probably, I don't know, 100 dudes from Harvard within 5 minutes of us being in office. They're working 12 hours a day.
Why
I can tell you
Harvard?
that because I used to work.
From Indian.
Well, that's fine enough.
Why
It's
Harvard?
just an analogy.
Oh,
But I say that because I used to work 12 hours a day. And my friends who at consulting companies do work 12 hours a day. And people that I went to school with, who I know have gone on to do those such things for other governments. We're here as if we don't absorb. We're rich. We don't have to ourselves go through all of these things. Hire people and make them do it. So that's what we're going to do. The government, the biggest mystery in Guyana, is why a government that's this rich 4 times over increasing the budget and hire a bunch of people and work them into the ground to do it for them. Why are they fighting up as if they themselves have to do it when their capacity, given the size of the budget, is clearly, I mean, at minimum, if you have spending 4 times as much money, you'd think you'd have far more staff. You'd think you have far more analysis. You'd think you'd be far more studies. Is that what you see? Therefore, you have huge levels of waste to the point that, I mean, I always make the joke, when I first heard 2 cents out of the dollar is being wasted, my first thought was to shut down the government, give back the taxpayers the money because this is a waste of time. And when I say that to people abroad, given the size of the budget, they're horrified.
Let me ask a question because that will
sure.
predicate.
Yeah, well, hold on.
what
Leonard, let me just make one quick comment
Yeah.
on your line of questions, actually. There's the whole question of the tax rate and the kind of minimum wage issue. There is a general sense that the strategy is a private sector strategy, which informs a kind of fear of a rising wage level. In other words, you know, and I think that comes from a whole economic approach that is widely held. But you know, I'm not so sure that it is necessarily the case. And when I look at around the Caribbean, one of the places with famously high wage levels is Barbados compared to other parts of the Caribbean. And yet, Barbados has performed so well over the years. So this paradigm that you have to keep wages down to progress, we need to review that. And you see, and that connects to this whole thing. Because I tell you something. When we look at what's going on in this country, you know, if you drive from here to Linden, and you see these huge things going up, huge expanses everywhere, right? Massive stuff is going on, massive amounts of spending and so on. But the guy who is selling dog food and the guy I see, you know, selling point to broom or whatever, their lives are not changing, and that is where we have to be concerned.
Yeah. All right, we are an oil economy for the last 4.5 years. What is the timeline for the dog food man to see his income rise and be elevated? Is it within this 4 year, within 80? What's a reasonable timeline?
Do we see a movement in that direction? You see, the paradigm is one. What people have to understand is if you have a certain paradigm, then that paradigm depends on low wages being maintained. You know, the person who's a businessman, he depends on wages, and when the wages start rising, I mean, you know, the China is the big production manufacturer for the world because the Chinese wages were low, so the capital went to China. And when the wages start rising there, let's go to
Bangladesh.
And we move on. We move on. So this need to maintain wages at a low level is part of a paradigm, and we have to look at that. I suspect that the government is aware that they have cash that they could give higher wages, but it is part of a paradigm.
I don't think the issue is wages in and of itself per se, and you made a point which I believe might be so also, that the private sector at this time might be unable to keep up with rise in government sector wages. And so the government may be sympathetic to that and try to keep wages at a manageable level for a time being. But there are many countries that pursue that path, and you said China, for example. For many years, the government of China tried to keep wages at one period of time. It was even artificially low, right? So that they can get. But I think our problem in Guyana is that our manufacturing sector is not large. We have a high service and commercial sector.
Well, let me give you a precise response to this, right? And this is where I think we gotta take a step back. And I've been saying it since we first discovered oil, because the thing is, we must ask ourselves, all right, what country are we more similar to? What type of revenues are we looking at? What type of jobs exist in that country? And it seems to me that there's a little bit of difficulty digesting. You know, in Saudi Arabia, Saudis are management people, they own companies. They're not involved in low-wage jobs. So there's no universe in which Guyana will have Guyanese involved in low-wage jobs. Because right now, more oil per capita than Saudi Arabia and these types of things. We're going to be the highest per capita producer of oil by the end of the year, and these kinds. So we have to say to ourselves, therefore, it is not about keeping wages low, but rather equipping Guyanese to be able to seize the opportunities that will come as a result of these changes. And that's why there has to be, and we talk about this, a focus on education, upskilling, reskilling. We have to deal with the fact that 80% of Guyanese don't have maths and English when you sit down and you work it out. We have to, and of course our programs therefore are geared to build up a level of human capital
No, man, that's too high.
accumulation.
Not 80%. No. Anyway, go on.
Because,
No. When you say our program, you're referring to
well, I'm talking about
the opposition.
I'm talking about the opposition's program. So, as an example, the 50,000, this 50 for 50, $50,000 a month for 50,000 people to pursue higher education and to go back to school, get their maths and English and so on. That's designed to produce, by the end of the oil sector, a roughly 90% level of high school attainment, right, or equivalent, which is like the UK or other countries. Now, the reason for that is we understand that you can't have a country with tremendous revenues and a vast majority of people don't have a lot of basic qualifications. You're going to end up in all sorts of contradictions and problems. And so we're not modeling after China, because why would we model after China? We got to model after UAE or something similar to us. And that has underlying mathematics, which informs your policies. So from the moment that we discovered oil, I said to myself, oh my God, it's like you have a bucket and you drop your soap in it, you make a small bubble. But if you drop a whole thing of soap powder, you shift for the whole system. So we know, the moment that I became advisor to the leader to Aubrey Norton, I sat down and worked out the whole 30 years and all the numbers are where we need to be. Because I recognize this is the underlying fundamentals driving this. Now, failing to do that, you'll end up with all kinds of problems, like you're spending more and more in education, but your maths pass rate is 31%, it keeps falling. It's because you're not targeting the areas that you need to be able to reach the level you need to reach, given your wealth. So you got to internalize the fact that you're wealthy. And then ask yourself, what would a wealthy person do?
You know, you have to have a strategy.
Good.
You have to have a strategy.
And so that is really the way we approach it. It's not
And then
just
you involve everybody
calling
in the strategy.
numbers.
So what,
It is based
what would you
off
put
of
in
doing that.
2025 budget?
Yeah.
To
2026 budget.
2025 budget.
So he said, what would we do differently? What would we do differently?
What would you put in the budget to get closer to your ideal?
Well, let me give you a couple of key projects. So obviously the 50 for 50, they incentivize people to go back and get training and to build up human capital. That is one. Another one that is critical, we've talked about putting $50 billion towards a development bank focused on productivity. We need to provide finance for Guyanese businesses, large and medium scale, to adopt technologies to improve their level of productivity. So you talk about manufacturing. It's not just minimal, small manufacturing, but rather manufacturing that leverages technology to produce high wages. Because it's pointless to produce low-wage manufacturing. It's not shirts. It is more sophisticated manufacturing, like agricultural manufacturing, where you have a farm that has very high yields, and then you have they are able to produce final goods, right? So you're not just producing the grapes, you're producing the jam, if you understand me. And you're doing that in a very efficient way. So we're saying that that is another area where you need to have direct funding, and we've heard the private sector cry out that it hasn't been that kind of funding. So those are two areas. And then the other area that what we focus on, which is a little bit different from what we're looking at here, is that at the end of the day, we need to have in this country a social safety net that not only eases our poverty concerns, but helps our economy to grow more effectively. And so we talk about a job seekers benefit. So those who are looking for jobs, you get in $40,000 a month. It pulls you above the poverty line, number one, but number two, that it serves in effect as a form of unemployment insurance. So when you're moving between jobs, you have a cushion that allows you to change jobs more efficiently, and that allows for more efficient reallocation of labor. So you reduce your structural unemployment.
The operator signal 1 minute more.
Well, those are just some. But my point, I say that to say...
So whatever you're doing, remember there's 1 minute.
I say that to say that when we're looking at the economy, we're not just looking at it in the old way of looking at it. We're not just looking at it abstractly. We're sitting down and we're assessing what has happened, what is likely to happen, and we're developing policies based on the underlying change in the math and the structure of the economy.
Quickly, Leno, Dr. Thomas.
Dr. Thomas, you go ahead. Just wrap up in half a minute.
Sure. No, well, I really appreciate this. As I said, this opportunity, and I think that we get back to the question of strategy, of a strategy that we get back to the question of how do we involve people in a meaningful way, so that everybody feels represented. You don't have to be a supporter of the government to feel that you're part of this thing. And the whole thrust, when I listened to the budget presentation, I didn't get that sense of a unifying budget. I got a sense of hey, we're gonna do this for you, we're doing that, and that is not entirely what I would.
Is there something you want to say?
No. I just believe that from the presentation we heard today, I was hoping that we had something a little more concrete as alternative things. The presentations were a little, for me, right? I just got to be honest, a little pie in the sky kind of thing, right?
Wow.
Well, you can always bring me back to elaborate.
Yes.
Right? I was hoping that you would get down to...
That's a John Bilash?
Not necessarily. I probably should have used milder terms.
But that's your view. And you're entitled to your view. I'd like to know...
But I was trying to get concrete.
It would be good to get
if you're
feedback.
400 and you're 150,
well, when you go
to pinpoint.
When the show is finished and you look at the
comments,
you will see there'll be 100. But we have to close. I want to say something before I close, and that's directly to Elson Lowe. If the answer is yes, he will no longer be invited to this program. If the answer is no, it's a different matter.
You can't threaten the man before you ask the question.
He said the last time, he would not be invited because I don't want him to incur expenses coming here. He said the last time he came in, he went to the hairdresser for this program. It looked like he went to the hairdresser again for this program. The man is spending money coming here. Look, Dr. Thomas, I'm sure we will be back here.
I did go to the hairdresser. You see my hair.
Thanks for being with us. You were watching the economic advisor to the leader of the opposition, Elson Lowe, give his take on the budget, and regional economist, formerly of the Inter-American Development Bank, Guyanese Dr. Desmond Thomas, presently at the UG, giving his take too. Thanks for being with us. We will see you on Wednesday. Have a very pleasant Monday evening.